welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That guy over there, Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Listen, we promised everybody we would give them a review of the new horror movie, and it is out on October 30th. Mm-hmm. Come Play.
Yes.
And we had a chance to watch this movie. This is a really good movie, folks. Mm-hmm. I think you guys are going to really dig this. It's got a good twist on kind of technology and the paranormal and a really weird melding of this. Oliver, a very lonely young boy, he's kind of isolated, kind of bordering on the spectrum and unable to kind of find a place for him to fit in. His friend really is kind of his tablets and electronics, and something sees that and exploits that weakness and starts making itself known to him through his electronics. And it doesn't just affect him. After a while, everybody starts to see a little bit of what's going on, and it starts tormenting him. And how far would you go as a parent to protect your child from the monster beyond the screen? Yeah, there's definitely some social implications, Tim, that they're toying with, showing our addictions to our electronics. But yeah. I thought overall, as a spooker and a jumpy horror movie, this was a really well done flick.
I thought so too. You know, we have the little argument between us, what's going to get us first, AI or zombies? And I don't know how you're not saying AI after this movie. And I, you know, every time now after seeing this movie that I look at my iPhone and it asks me if I want to use Face ID, I cringe. Because that little facial recognition thing is, it's creeping me out more and more after seeing this. Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. I'm a little more uncomfortable after seeing this movie. I enjoyed it a lot as well. Yeah, I did.
Does a good job of doing that, kind of making, kind of off-putting. Now, again, the movie is coming to theaters Friday, October 30th, and it's based on an acclaimed short movie called Larry, which, Larry is a monster name, doesn't sound real scary, but they do a great job of playing this up, and what is it that we're dealing with. Check the movie out. I'm going to go on 5 stars. I'm going to give it a solid 4 stars for kind of seeing a weakness in us as humanity and seeing the connection we have to technology and exploiting that with a new twist on the supernatural. So I really dug it. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars.
I liked it as well. I'll go a little bit lower. I'll go 3.5, but I really did enjoy it. I'll tell you, they got me with the technology deal. Anytime you throw technology in there to try and get to me, you're going to get to me. So I'll give it 3.5 out of 5.
We'll include, again, a link to the trailer so you can watch it, but make sure you check this movie out. If you're looking for a good spooker for the holiday season, this is going to be the one to go check out. So, again, that is in theaters October 30th, and you can see Come Play and check out the trailer on today's program. All right, let's get started. Speaking of exciting times, Tim, it's Ghostober on the Travel Channel. They have pulled out all the stops. All of their big shows are back. And they've been really doing some fun stuff. Today is the day, Tim. Mm-hmm. Today is the day they premiere the Holzer Files Season 2 on the Travel Channel. We're going to be a little later than normal tonight because we're backed up with the special 2-hour Halloween presentation from Ghost Adventures. And for those of you that just need one more taste of the craziness that is the Tiger King, you can tune in tonight to Travel Channel. They will be going, the team of Ghost Adventures are going to go to Joe Exotic Zoo and examine some really strange circumstances and paranormal tropes that you can check into on that. And then stay tuned. Right after is the season premiere of Season 2 of the Holzer Files. Joining us on today's program, Shane Pittman, Cindy Kaza, my teammates on this program. We are here to talk, and we've got a bunch of questions that were emailed in from listeners that want to know different aspects of the show. Cindy, welcome to the program. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Shane, good to have you back too, buddy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Guys, this was a weird year. Let's start off by addressing just how strange this was. We got the word that Season 2 was going to launch, and within a few weeks, we were out on the road filming. And it was kind of strange, wasn't it, to, as we're out there doing this, slowly watch the evolution of the pandemic in the news and the way it was handled. Were you guys affected on the road at first by just how radical and kind of frightening it seemed to be getting in the real world?
I mean, I think I was affected.
Oh, go ahead, Cindy. We'll start with you and then jump over to Shane. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I think I kind of screwed up the last shoot before we shut down, because I was the one who was like, we got to go. Like, this is going to get really bad, And I'm glad, obviously we went home, but no, I was definitely affected by all of it. I mean, it was scary, and then for somebody who could feel things so intensely, I think it made it even worse. So yeah, it was scary.
How about you, Shane? What were you taking? Were you taking this in stride at first, or were you as unnerved by this pandemic when it first launched as everybody else was going?
Well, at first I was taking it in stride, but then, there was so much uncertainty, and every place that we went to, people were talking about it. People were just as confused as we were as to what was going to happen and what was going to go on. Then, of course, our crew and stuff would have discussions about it, and, thinking about different scenarios that we were going to do if it got worse. I mean, there was so much uncertainty with it that it was crazy. I remember the day that we had to go back home. It was almost like a sudden thing. Like, hey, if we don't go home now, we may be stuck on the road. We may be stuck in our hotel room for a little while because they're starting to shut things down. It was just a really, really crazy time. It's been a wild year for sure.
I think the funniest moment for that was when we went to our final episode before the shutdown, and they had started to put all these new kind of things in place at locations that poor Shane had just spent, I think, 4 hours driving from one location to the next. It was warm outside. He was carrying all of his luggage and all of the equipment bags in by himself. So he was breaking kind of a sweat, huffing and puffing, comes in, you check into your room, and a little bit later you get a call from like the vice president of this hotel chain. And they're concerned.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, they were concerned you had COVID because you were huffing and puffing and sweating when you came in the door. That's how scary it got out in the field, that, just normal activity. People were really starting to be jumpy about what we might be bringing from our last location. And it wasn't the supernatural they were concerned about.
Right. That phone call was really awkward. It was really awkward. It's like, look, our receptionist said you were glistening a little bit. It's like, that's because I'm just an oily guy. My face is naturally oily. I can't help that. So it was just, it was very awkward. Very awkward.
I'm an oily guy. What was worse to admit, that you didn't have COVID or that you were just really an oily guy?
I think both was equally as embarrassing.
Now, go ahead, Tim.
I'm curious, and I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but and this isn't a political question. Let's preface this with this. Where we're at now, because I know you guys had wrapped up filming a little bit later in the year. From the first part where you guys had before the shutdown, before everything had shut down earlier in the year, to the point where you had gone back to filming, there had been a little bit of fatigue with the virus, where people were getting a little tired of things, and you'd seen people getting into fights in stores and people not wanting to mask and the basically people getting tired of being locked down. My question, and I'll start with Dave, and then we'll go around to Cindy and then to Shane. Did you see a change in attitude out on the road from the time that you had gone home initially to the time where you went back out on the road, as to people's attitudes towards you? And in that what you just pointed out there, Shane, where you have the hotel chain vice president who's panicked to the last shoot. Are you seeing a change in attitude with the public in general and how they treat you when you come into their town?
Well, when we first launched into the season, we were kind of just watching it de-evolve like the rest of the planet. And then, as we started getting into that last episode before the break, there was, specifically, they're like, okay, Dave, you're going to talk to these people, and I know you like to shake their hands and be close to them and look them in the eyes when they're telling you these stories, but we need you to step back, don't touch, don't shake hands. And we did our first 2 interviews and then went back to our hotel, and at that point we got the call, guys, we're going home. We're going to wrap up and go home tomorrow. And that was it. And then we had that big span off. And when we went back out, people were still very cautious. And there was a lot of rules that had to go into play before our team agreed to go back out in the field. And I feel that they did a really good job of keeping us clean and isolated as best as they could in the situation. We were tested constantly. And we were the first paranormal show. I think we were one of the first TV shows, period, back out there filming. And it was only because we had enough faith and trust in the network and our production company to keep us safe. But people, by the time we got back out on the road, I got to kind of feel they were tired of being isolated and were happy to have people around and talking and having that open to them again. I don't know. That's just my perspective on it. Shane, what did you feel?
Yeah, I think they were a little tired of being cooped up and things like that. I mean, everybody kind of had that feeling. You want that social interaction. It's just human nature. You want to have that interaction with people. But what I saw out on the road was there was such a mutual respect for the most part. Like there was people out there saying, okay, I may not want to wear this mask. I may not want to do this, but I'm going to do it just to be on the safe side, play it safe. And for the most part, that's what I saw all across the board is people just being respectful of each other. It was very comforting to see that, people just
right.
getting together and doing what they can. Everybody was respectful for the most part, and it was just a great thing to see. Everybody came together during that time. It was really good.
Well, Cindy, did you find that, with this kind of quieting where people were more isolated, do you think that kind of awakened spiritual activity because people were home more, they were focused, their energy was there? Or do you think that they were just keening into it now more because they were not as distracted by the outside world?
No, I think that, a lot of people have had experiences during this time because I think people are more present, like we're forced to just stop. So initially I was like, oh, maybe it's the energy of COVID that's waking people up. And then I was like, oh no, I think it's actually the fact that everybody has just been forced to stop in their tracks. And so they're actually just more aware of what's going on around them, and everybody's more sensitive during this time. So there's a lot of different things playing into it. But I mean, it's interesting because I teach mediumship. And I've opened up these Zoom classes for mediumship for beginners, for anybody who's interested. And it's like, they're filling up because people are curious and they're having all these experiences during COVID and they want to know what's going on. So there's definitely something going on, with this energy, but also with being forced to stop, because most of the time, I always tell people, most of the time we're walking around either thinking about tomorrow or yesterday, and the mediumistic mind is in the present, it's in the now. So if you're not operating in that space, you're not going to be aware of the signs around you.
But there was so much more uncertainty, so much more fear in the world. Do you think that energy feeds the spiritual realm as well? That kind of agitation and anxiety feeds it more than just a regular acknowledgement of the spirit world?
I do, Dave. I think it depends on the spirit or you know what I mean, like what you're dealing with. It's kind of a tricky question because like it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about like our loved ones, right? Because a lot, in my daily job, when I'm not doing Holzer Files and doing these investigations, I'm communicating with people's loved ones who have passed away. So it's a little bit different. I'm not going into a haunted location. I don't find that energy feeds off of fear, but I think that, if you're going into an environment where you're dealing with something a little bit darker, then there's the potential there. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. That's a loaded question. Like I could probably sit in there and feel into it like for a whole hour and talk about the different possibilities. But I also want to caution people that, like, if you're operating out of a sense of fear, then you might be attracting something into your, energy field that you don't want to be attracting. So I guess my advice is to, like, yep, fear is a normal feeling during this time, but try not to sit in that for too long, especially if you're trying to make connections to the spirit world.
Agreed. It was a weird vibe out there, Tim, to be back in the world. Post, and I can't say post because we're not totally on the other side of this COVID thing, but post that first wave, and you go back into it. So I know there was a little bit more unease for me. I think for Shane, I can't speak as much for Cindy. She seems very grounded and centered and going back out there. But, I think that some of that leaks over a little bit into the show because it was a lot more, the world itself was just a lot scarier place. So you've already got that kind of built-in anxiety. And then we step into these locations, and as inviting as they were, there's still that underpinning of anxiety and stress from the people, the place, the employees, our crew, and us, plus then the spirit realm. And the spirits were hungry. They seemed to want the attention at a lot of these locations that had been shut off from the tide of energy that they were used to getting. And suddenly we're going back in and we're the catalyst to reignite this. And this season brings out some really weird stories.
And not that I'm not trying to turn attention away or anything like that, but with me, I'm an immunocompromised person. So when I look at the world, I've really shut myself in during this thing. I mean, I rarely go out, and now we're looking at a potential, what they're calling a quote unquote third wave. So when I look at, when this entire time when, like Dave, when you're out filming, I'm worried to death for the three of you. When, you're out and then you come back in and then you're back out and you're out on the road to stay for a long period of time. And you're going from city to city. And now the reports from like the Department of Defense say that flying is probably the safest thing with a mask that you can do with the HEPA filters that they have on planes and whatnot. And I'll pose this question to you because they have mentioned this, and I know we're skipping ahead and we're putting good intentions out there with this, but this is this question, and I am probably putting the cart before the horse here. But God willing, let's say we greenlight season 3, and they greenlight season 3 before a vaccine. With this third wave that's out there, is there enough in your three minds? Is there enough out there with the protections that we have there that that we can film a season 3 in continuity, that you don't have to keep going back and forth between home and the set, that you could go out there and film, let's say, a 13 episode season and be all right and be safe enough for your families? And then 2, do you think that because the world has been so distanced from each other, that those spirits would be even more ramped up than what you saw this past season?
Well, I know, speaking for myself, I've never felt safer in an airport. There's nobody. And we were going through some major airports in Los Angeles, New York, California, Minnesota, Chicago, and they were dead. There was very few people there. And on every plane, basically, you're alone in a row. And they stagger you in your seats when you're alone in the row, so that, like, if I'm sitting there, I probably don't have somebody right in front of me or right behind me. There's staggering the way they do it. And I felt like they were very diligent in the way they kept cleaning and keeping up. So I think, if they decide to go with a season 3, if all the protocols are in play, I think I would feel safe going back out there to do it. But again, we're going to have to see how if this next wave crashes against the shore like they're afraid it's going to do. But I'm open to it. And I think we saw quite a bit of activity that I don't know if we would have had the same experience had the world not kind of been in a lockdown, because, there's some places that are dependent on a lifeblood of activity going through them. I'm really excited. We got to visit the Queen Mary, which, Tim, has been a big part of our history on Darkness Radio.
Yep.
And it was heartbreaking because we go on board the ship, which is always so bustling with employees and visitors and tourists. And then we got on the ship and there was nobody. There was 3 or 4 employees and then our crew. And that's it. And it felt alive, but the same stead of just death on the ship. I don't know how else to explain it. And the people that are working there and the Commodore and the security, they were saying how much more active things have gotten. It's as though the spirits were restless, that there wasn't the same attention. People weren't coming to see them and speak to them and feed them, and different spirits that they had never encountered before were making their presence known. So that was a reality in our world, investigating the supernatural. So if we shut down again, and a lot of these places are kind of starving for the attention that they've had all these years, I don't know. Shane, what do you think? I mean, going back out there, did you feel a major shift in the way the spirits act as opposed to how they might have been before the shutdown and all of these closures?
Yeah, I definitely did. I think, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I wonder if the spirit world can sense shifts in our realities. Because, like you said, Dave, you mentioned this earlier, the evidence and the activity that we saw this season, I think, was unparalleled. I've never seen anything quite like it this season. That's why I'm so excited for people to be able to check this out. But Tim, to your questions, if we got green lit for season 3, and Dave touched on this earlier as well, I was really pleased with the safety protocols that the network and the production company put in place for us.
Okay.
And one thing that we proved for season 2 is that, thankfully, it worked. What we were doing, it worked, and it worked quite well. I would be willing to go out there. Now, at the same time, we'd have to evaluate the situation. We don't know how it would be at that time. It could be a completely different scenario from this past
season.
The
first close down.
Yeah, right. But I would be willing to take that chance if there were protocols in place and there wasn't like an increase or a increase in severity, so to speak. What I'm really basically saying is I trust them enough. If they believe that we're good to go, and I'm looking at everything, I think I'd be good to go out again.
Now, Cindy, I was asking before, I know we're having some technical difficulties with your line, but I was just asking, by cutting some of these haunted locations out from their food line of energy of us, the visitors, like the Queen Mary and the Conference House and so many places like that, when you take away that lifeline to them, do you think that causes an upheaval in the spirit realm? Will they eventually fade if that energy is not given to them, or will they build because they're hungry, they want that attention again?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dave. The way that I feel about the spirit world and experience the spirit world, right? It's not, to me, necessarily like the spirits are unable to make contact. Gosh, it's going to get a little wordy, but here we go. So, like when we were on the Queen Mary, right? Like that's a good example of that place is usually bustling, right?
Right.
There are usually a lot of people there, and then the spirits can kind of feed off that energy, or they're used to interacting, right? So when we went in there, it seemed like, wow, like they must have been hungry for attention. They were finally, somebody was back to listen to them speak, right? So I think we had such a good investigation there, and we were really in a great situation to be able to have full access of the ship. So I thought that was pretty cool. But in general, like when we talk about the spirit world and mediums being able to make connections to the spirit world, from my experience, it doesn't really matter necessarily that a medium or somebody be at the location all the time. So like when I do readings for people, I can do readings for somebody that lives in Australia from my bedroom and still connect into the spirits. So I think that the energy isn't always just trapped in a location. Does that make sense to you? Like some of it, pieces
Right.
of it might be, but I think that mediums can connect from wherever. So I think it could be an interesting, I don't know, experiment to like try to tap into the Queen Mary, or put somebody there and have a medium tapping in from a distance and making connection, because it's showing us that the energy isn't just stuck in one spot. So I don't know that I would say that the spirits are like can't connect elsewhere, right? I think it's about setting intentions and for people to be open. Does that make sense? Getting a little wordy, but.
No, exactly. I get the concept of that. It's just so, we were talking, Tim had asked if we go back for season 3, but there's more shutdowns and things like that. Do you think that will confuse the spirit world? Are they noticing this shift? The other side realize there's this void of the living, not out and about doing what they do.
Well, here's a thought. What's interesting, right? Because if we're talking about these locations where people are usually present, like what happens if things are shut down for another year? Do the spirits actually try to make contact elsewhere? Are they going to leave, right? Are they so tired of nobody being there that they're going to actually shift their energy outward? Is that going to cause a shift of hauntings, right? So maybe there's a location in one street that's super active, then nobody's there. So do the ghosts go to the nearest house with people? I mean, it's something interesting to think about what happens, right?
That's weird. We keep talking about the uptick in paranormal activity during the virus and especially the lockdowns. It's interesting. Is it really an uptick? Are we noticing more because we're home more? Or, like you said, are the spirits becoming transient and they're coming to where the people are? That's really bizarre. I wonder if in season 3, as we investigate these cases, will there be more activity in some of them that are open and are getting that attention because the spirits are going where there is life to be had again?
Yeah, I mean, it could change a lot of things, right? You could see a huge shift in activity, and it could be just because of that. And again, like, I don't think it's that the spirits or that mediums can't connect them with spirits from a. But if nobody's actively trying to do that, they're going to go where they're going to be heard. So I think, I don't know, maybe could just be a whole new thing, Dave and Shane. Like my wheels are spinning. I'm ready to pitch. I'm ready to pitch a show.
Well, let's stick with the Holzer Files as long as we can before we break off.
No, I'm kidding. Episode. No, I'm it's a side B. It's the B track to the Holzer Files, right?
Right. And Shane, boy, from the tech side of things, wouldn't it be interesting? It's too bad we couldn't say now, hey, if we go season 3, we want to go to these locations. Let's wire them up now to start checking. Is there a dip in energy? Is there a change as things close down and then reemerge? It'd be fascinating just from the technical aspect to see if we can pick up a marked difference in these locations with the energy.
Oh, absolutely. And, we definitely could do that. If we had the go ahead to do that, we've got equipment nowadays that can test the atmospheric changes. This, Dave, and we can test that in real time. So it's absolutely possible. I would love to do that. That would be a really good experiment to try.
Well, Tim, we've got a lot of changes that took place in season 2. The locations are, I feel, really amped up now that we kind of kicked the dust off of these case files. And in season 1, some people let us in to investigate, but there were many places that were kind of let's stand back and watch how season 1 goes before we allow you back into our home or our location. And they saw season 1 and liked how we present the program and appreciated the investigative technique that we used, treating it more almost like a crime show of really de-evolving the story, trying to get to the truth and peeling back the veneer of falsity that's been placed in so many of these locations. And in season 2, when we go back in, it's with doors wide open to a lot of locations. And a few of them are locations that Dr. Holzer tried to get into when he was at his height, stories they had shared with him, but then didn't really want to open up to an investigation. So we get that chance to go back in, and locations like America's Stonehenge, Mystery Hill, that were such a focal point of his investigations that he visited a dozen times and never really talked about the paranormal aspect with his family because he was holding back. And we kind of go in and uncover why he was reticent to do that. And we have a couple of very special guests that join us in that episode. So this season we key it up in a different way. We are able to take the investigations in different paths, and this season got spooky. It was weird, and we had I believe this season's going to show some of the best paranormal evidence that's ever been captured, video and audio.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. I did have that question in the back of my mind as to if any doors were open that weren't open for Hans Holzer. And, and specifically, I did have one question for Cindy. And this may seem like an odd question, Cindy, so bear with me. And that is that Hans Holzer believed in investigating with a good trans medium. In this show, of course, the tradition continues. And I guess I would ask you this question. Do you feel that there's more pressure on you in this show in the idea that there's more pressure that you have to be more accurate than usual, being that your results are being displayed on television and being displayed to a worldwide audience, whereas, and follow me on this, not only do your results shown on television, but now being compared to the results that Hans and his medium came up with to begin. So there's compare and contrast being shown there as well.
Yeah, I try to make it a point in my work to not compare myself to other mediums, because it really doesn't do me any service, and it gets me into my ego, right? Is there a lot of pressure on me? Yeah, I do. Like, the guys have seen me say this, like going into the baseline, I'm like, God, there's so much pressure. Because I do want to do a good job for the show, right? Like, I want to do a good job for the team. And the thing is, when you're walking into a location, you've got a house that's however many years old. Let's just say it was built in the 1600s. We're dealing with how many years of stories and timelines that are associated with that house. And as a medium, I'm walking in, fingers crossed, that I'm picking up on the timeline needed for the story that Hans Holzer, or the investigation that Hans Holzer did. And I have no prior knowledge of what I'm even stepping into. So, excuse me, there is a lot of pressure. But, the really cool thing about what's been happening with the show, and has been just kind of a joy and a once in a lifetime opportunity for me, is to see, like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I'm walking in and trusting the spirit world. And then when we compare what I'm getting to what Epsilon Sybil got, they're lining up. And so it's just, I guess I have to say, like, throughout that process, it's just allowed me to trust the spirit world even more. And I honestly trust the spirit world more than I trust people in the living, because there have been times where I've walked into a place and I feel crazy. I'm like, God, this makes no sense. Nobody understands it. Oh, God, I'm not doing a good job. And then we find out, like, later that it was true, So I guess it's all about just, as a medium, I have to just kind of surrender to the experience and let it happen. Because if I get in my head or I compare myself to other mediums, then it's not doing anybody any good. And it's not doing the spirit world any good, because, as I was mentioning before, like, the mediumistic mind is present. So the more I'm thinking about other things, the less present I am for the spirit communication.
Is it weird to get validation in two different ways? Because I know spirit can give you validation in one way and then phrase it a different way. And then to try and put those puzzles together, yet do it for television, I know has to be maddening. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I know. I get it. Look, it's like, anytime as a medium, when you're putting yourself out there on television, it's you're, I guess, in a sense, I guess you could say you're taking a risk, but I look at it as just me doing my thing. And again, like, there are times where I feel a lot of pressure or I get frustrated, but then I have to snap myself out of it, because that's not why I do what I do. I need the validation in order to know that I'm actually on the right track. And when I teach mediumship, I tell people validation is what helps you build your confidence. Without the validation, you don't know if you're making stuff up in your mind or if it's real. But at a certain point, after doing the work for years, you learn to trust the experience, whether it's validated or not. And luckily, I work with such a great team of people, with Dave and Shane, and with Painless and the production company, where they believe me, right? Like they believe what I'm getting. It's a lot harder when you're walking and you're working with people who don't believe in mediums at all. And that's when it gets super frustrating, because you feel like you can't win, which is why I'm so fortunate to be a part of a show that's based around, investigations using mediums, because that's really special. And to be a part of a show like that, it's special, really, and it's hard to find, right? Because a lot of shows aren't really paranormal shows don't work that way. So I'm super grateful.
Awesome. So Dave,
I will tell you, Tim, if I can mention,
sure.
When we go into these locations, Shane and I are book ready. We've read the stories, the cases, we understand them. I have an outline of kind of what the beliefs have always been. Then we go in and release the hounds. We'll take Cindy and Shane into a baseline. And again, we don't let Cindy know where we're going. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are some times we go to a famous location like the Queen Mary or the Whaley House, that she has been there before. But, with Queen Mary, although she had visited there before, she never got to really move about in the ship. She was stationed in one area for an event that she was a part of, and it was more about tapping into the people that were there as opposed to the haunting. And we don't let her know the history that we're trying to uncover or the stories that are taking place. So when you watch her, it's exciting to see her go through the baseline, and the crew will laugh at me because I get excited like a hyperactive 7-year-old as she's tapping in the stuff that's in the notes, and she's walking that same pathway that Ethel or Sybil or one of the other mediums that Hans worked. She's picking up on those same vibes 50 years later. And it's still there and resonating. And sometimes she'll get details that they missed or have finally decided to reveal themselves. And I'll jot these notes down. And then it's kind of up to Shane and I to take what we have and not make the round pegs fit into the square holes, but to see what these new bits of information that Cindy's uncovered means to the story. And it's so nice because when you're doing that and you get this clue, and then it's there, you just have to know the right question to ask. And had I not known that piece when I spoke to the historian or spoke to the experiencers, I might have missed that hook that we were looking for that pulls it all together very nicely. And it's really, it's impressive to see how she does her craft and does it so well, and can focus when she's got a camera guy and a sound guy and Dave and Shane and everybody around her, and she still has to focus into the moment that we're there. And you realize these locations have many stories and many years of experience, but she's going in and focusing and cutting through. And it's like being in a bar and everybody's talking and there's music going and somebody's throwing darts and glasses are clinking, and she's still focusing in on one conversation. And she's able to pull it off, and it's really astounding to watch take place, and it's exciting to see happen. And I love those moments when I'm like, there's none of what she's saying making any sense to me, and I'm turning to the camera. I'm like, I've got nothing. I don't have this name. I don't have any of this story. And the skeptical nature in you is like, oh God, how far off is she? And then the next day I sit down with somebody, and as we're talking, they go, and there was this one point in history, and then they tell this story that fits so perfectly into what she was picking up on and how it ties into what may be taking place there. That's, to me, it's validation of the spiritual realm. It's validation of the ethereal and physical realm coming together and putting these puzzle pieces together for us. And there is no coincidence, according to Dr. Holzer. And I find that's true because so many of these locations, things fall into place where they need to. And I think at times we're getting help from Hans and from the mediums that have come before us. Cindy's tapped into those mediums. And I feel that there's been times when those mediums were sending us messages back then that we can corroborate now, like the house in Metuchen. She's seeing something. The medium's on recording 50 years ago, talking about something that is in the house right now that was not present 50 years ago. And it's like remote viewing. And she's like, I'm seeing the spiritual side. I'm seeing this, but there's a connection to this. And that connection is us. And that's when the story comes together. And it's so cool to watch happen.
That is very cool. And you bring all that up, and that actually dovetails nicely into a point you brought up earlier. And I want to tie that all together. into this question. So you brought up the fact that the show has actually brought you into places that Hans Holzer himself couldn't get into. So that's going to bring you into new adventures that you can't necessarily validate against Hans Holzer's information. Now, you've gotten validation on these previous cases that Hans has himself investigated, which is awesome. You're backing up everything that he's investigated and more, which is building confidence as a team between the three of you, which has got to feel amazing. It's got to be amazing, and it's I mean, you know, that you're not only proving the evidence, but you're proving yourselves as a team for the entire world. It's right there on video. Now you're going into unexplored territory. So I'll ask this question, and I don't ask this with any malice. Don't take this the wrong way. But you're going into uncharted territory. With that, the evidence you now get going forward, knowing that Hans Holzer has not investigated these areas, would there be any trepidation or self-doubt that would come up with the evidence that you have, knowing that you don't have Hans Holzer's evidence to validate that? Or do you take it for what it is?
Well, he still wrote about these cases and would investigate them from the outside. So he would take history and tie them in, and we knew about them. So these cases that we are investigating are ones that he has ties to. He may not have been able to physically go there and investigate, but he has written about them and has a lot of information. With that said, we then go in and trust on what we're able to find with equipment that Shane provides and the experiments that he creates and what Cindy is picking up on. And then we take that to the next level with what can we find in 21st century investigative abilities to dig deeper into newspaper archives, history, things that weren't available to Dr. Holzer. Because unfortunately, he got some things wrong through time, but it was no fault of his own. He would take the word of a historian or a docent and somebody he believed was an expert on this situation. But you can see in his notes, he would tell the stories, but he's like, but I cannot corroborate this, or that was not my findings. And that leaves me mystified. So we get to go back in and try to demystify it. And we uncover why. Oh, because that docent lied to you the whole time, or the family might have been skewing what was being said because they wanted the attention of Hans Holzer. So, you know, we really do kind of dig into some of these really compelling aspects of the story, but I don't feel any pressure to investigate cases he didn't fully get to investigate. It to me is more of a release because I don't feel like I'm under that shadow or that specter of Dr. Holzer. I'm more paranoid about the cases we go into that were kind of his big stories and parts of history that were really, when you think of Hans Holzer, you think of this case. Those are more intimidating to me. I don't know, Shane, where do you stand on that?
Well, his writings and his cases were an excellent foundation, right? But he also said he didn't believe a case was ever fully closed. So I don't feel a lot of pressure because I think what we collect and us going into these cases the right way, we're just adding pieces of the puzzle together that maybe 30, 40, 50 years down the road, there may be a new group that looks at his foundation, Hans Holzer's foundation, our findings, and then they may add more pieces to the puzzle. So I just find that it's part of the experience, it's part of the process, and I'm just honored to be a part of this whole thing. You know, it's a great honor.
Yeah, and I just want to add into that, you know, it's always nice to have the validation that we can compare what we're getting to. But, you know, a paranormal investigation, like Dave was saying, like the case is never really closed, right? And things can happen over time that even though we're getting it correctly, maybe it wasn't exactly what Hans was getting, and that does happen now. But if you look at all the other paranormal shows out there, I mean, I think we're pretty fortunate that we have a special situation where we're able to go into a location and then compare what we're getting to something that somebody else also, got, but most shows don't have that luxury. So I think that, our show is in a special situation in that, sort of thing, but normally shows don't have that luxury. So I don't know. I think it works no matter how it goes. And I think even if we're going in and finishing the work that Hans couldn't finish and we don't have those notes to compare it to, like I said, I think we're still getting something, and that we've kind of proven ourselves at this point that we're able to do that.
We have to take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got some questions from the audience that have been mailed in and messaged to me. And we'll continue talking about Holzer Files Season 2, some of the scariest, weirdest, and most fun moments for the program. So make sure that you stay tuned with us. We'll be right back with more Darkness Radio. Hey, welcome back to the program. This is Darkness Radio, your home for the best in paranormal talk radio every week. Tune in as Dave and Tim explore the strange and supernatural world around them, including referring to themselves in first person like Dave often likes to do. Our guests today, I get to kind of be on the other side here. Dave Schrader, Cindy Kaza, Shane Pittman, all from the Holzer Files, which premieres tonight, Season 2, October 29th, 2020, right after the Ghost Adventures 2-hour Halloween special. You can check in our show. It's an hour later tonight than it will normally air. Next Thursday, we'll be back to our normal time, but set your DVRs. And please, I ask you, as a fan of TV myself and only having found this out last year, if you love a show, don't just DVR it and watch them all 13 weeks from now and power through them. That does your favorite shows no good. Watch the show live when you can, or watch it within the first 24 to 48 hours of recording, so that way it counts towards the ratings. Those ratings are imperative to keep your favorite shows on the air. And if you've recorded it and know you're not going to get to it, just turn it on while you go take a shower and let it play in the background, then come back to it later when you can sit down and enjoy the full episode. But let the viewing world know that you're tuning in and watching that show. It's very important. Season 2 of the Holzer Files, we get to dig in from 10 episodes last season into 13 this season, and digging into some really intriguing cases. Our kickoff episode tonight is the Phantom Hand, a case that was well documented, not just by the family and by Dr. Holzer, but by the police alike. And this case takes us to kind of uncharted territories for us in how we investigate and where we investigate, and the giant scope of what this story tells. Because, Tim, this episode is a perfect blend of what we love on the show, true crime and the supernatural. And it comes together in a way that we'd never experienced before, with some really dramatic and scary moments. Guys, when we were filming this episode, I was doing an interview at one point, and the death car, which is one of the train cars in this facility, we start hearing things banging around and walking in this train car while we're doing the interview outside of it. That was unnerving to me, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. This season, to me, is off the hook with the type of locations and stories that we get to dig into. So before I get to some of these emails, I want to ask you both, what are your favorite episode this season? Which one stood out to you or was the most frightening to you?
Oh, I'll go. This is Cindy. I don't know. There were so many, right? I really agree with you, Dave. Like, this is one of the craziest seasons of just off the charts paranormal activity, and that we were able to capture it on camera. It still blows my mind. And so I don't know where to begin. Like, they're all so unique. But I think the museum in New York City, that's a big one. What was it? I'm really bad at names. What was that one, Dave?
Was that the Merchant's House Museum?
Yeah, that one,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like, wow, right? And even the Surratt Tavern, right? With the disembodied voices we were hearing. I mean, there is so much going on in the season. Was I really frightened by any of the locations? I mean, they're all a little bit, oh gosh. I don't know. I mean, I always walk in pretty strong, right? But there are definitely some situations where I walked out being like, I'm glad I don't have to live in that house. And I think the one that I can say that the most about was the location in Maine. The first names, Dave. The one with I can't give too much away.
In Maine. I'm sorry.
Cohasset? Was it Cohasset?
Cohasset.
Okay.
No, not Cohasset. It was no, it's not Cohasset. It's the one where all the dogs were. I'll leave it at that. Which one was that?
Where all the
doghouse guys? The doghouse.
The doghouse.
Was that?
Got you. Oh, right. Right. That's a crazy story. And this woman is a nurse that lives there, and it's a historic home where there was a lot of interesting history surrounding it, Tim. And, we uncover there's some rumors that it might have been part of the Underground Railroad. So we go in search of that, and in search of the story of what this is. And that was one of the episodes I caught one of the most disturbing EVPs to me. I was up in the attic, and when we had done our other part of the investigation, Cindy kept pointing to the other side of the attic where no activity really was reported. The one, it was one side with this window where this woman was seen, and I was trying to do some EVP work over there by myself, and we kept hearing something moving around on the other side of the attic where Cindy had said there was something milling about. So I had actually started to do a prayer to clear it, and this thing was like getting rambunctious. So the cameraman and I move over to that side of the attic, and I turn on my recorder, and before I even speak, I start getting a response, and the spirit was not happy with me being there or trying to pray them out and clear this location. And it lets us know. And we caught some weird phenomena in that house, and the story is bizarre. The history is bizarre, but you're right. I don't think I could live in that house, Cindy. That's one place that the energy was just off for me. And to hear that EVP kind of taunting me and trying to tell me what to do, that was really a bizarre moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, and then there's and so I'm careful what I say because I'm not sure how much I can give away about an episode. But like when I'm in that one room and I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, there's something in here with me, and my automatic writing, it literally was stopped. Like I was stopped in my tracks, which I think was a protection because it made me leave the room. And then after I left, that's when we caught some pretty amazing activity on camera. So, I mean, there's like one situation after another in this season where I think I know, I think I can speak for you guys when I say this. It's like, wow, like, have you guys ever seen this much activity caught on camera in a paranormal show in one season? I
haven't. No, this was awesome. I, as a matter of fact, that's the only intimidating part of this season to me. I don't know how you cap a season like this with a season 3. What do we do? I mean, obviously we have to sacrifice Shane in season 3 to really get the blood. But Shane,
I did not agree to that.
Shane, what was a standout episode to you, and one of the more frightening stories that you felt we covered in season 2?
Well, I'm with you guys with all of the episodes are great. All of the cases were great. The premiere episode that comes on tonight was an interesting one. It's really, it was frightening. Just the story involving all of this was just frightening. I was in a location that I had a pretty terrifying experience, but one that really stood out to me was the Franklin Castle case, because if you guys remember, even before we started investigating, I had some really crazy experiences happen, which has never happened to me before. I had a crazy experience happen to me while doing equipment setup, which I've said, I've never had happen to that extent. And then whenever the main investigation happened, we caught some of the most insane pieces of evidence I think we've ever captured. When we were upstairs, Dave and Cindy, I think you guys remember that. Just crazy activity at that place.
I agree. It's an off-putting season in the sense that the activity was never ending, Tim. It was literally going from one place to another, was jumping out of the fire and into the frying pan in one sense or another. And you'd start to get that horror movie, take your deep breath, and everything seems fine. And then the bottom would drop out on you again, and something really startling would occur. And I'm not just talking about jump scares. I mean, I'm talking about legitimate weird things. And last season, I got bit and I got knocked to the ground. This season, Tim, I promise there is an episode that leaves me physically scarred for life, but you'll have to tune in to find out if it's paranormal or just a fat old guy who's kind of clumsy. So it could be one or the other, or a mixture of both. But tune in. That was a crazy escapade as well. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, now, in all fairness, though, David, before you get to the questions from the audience, I know you're kind of playing up the thing for sympathy, but let's talk about the guy who really deserves sympathy on the show, and that's Shane. Because honestly, you stuff him in closets, you throw him in dark places. He's really the Kenny from South Park of the Holzer Files. So I do want to ask
somebody
Shane,
killed Kenny.
Yeah,
right, which is a good question from Jackie Sidor, who wrote in as well, saying, I have to know, why is Shane always the one to be designated to go to the basement?
Thank you. That's what I wanted to ask. Thank you, Jackie, for asking that question.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead, Shane, please. Please.
Sure. All right. So I think what it is in those moments, in those situations, I try to tap in, like, try to open myself up in the moment. And a lot of those times, things happen because I think the spirits know that they'll get a reaction out of me. They'll know that I'll be receptive. Also, some of these places, some of these locations are really small areas. So Dave being a 6 foot, how tall are you, man? 6'2", something? I don't know.
But 6 feet tall and 4,000 pounds, so I can't fit into most locations Shane could easily slip in and out of.
So, but a lot of people say, "Oh, Dave's being mean, sending him to these locations." But no, I believe that Dave does this because he knows that in these situations we may get some really awesome evidence, and it's been proven to be the case in some cases that we've done. Is we've gotten some really cool evidence because I was made to be put in these uncomfortable situations. And on the flip side, like I said, a lot of times he can't get into these locations, like just physically cannot crawl down and get into these locations. So that's what it is. But there's no meanness about it. He's doing it because he's the leader of the group, and he's doing what he feels is best to move the case forward. And I trust him. I trust Cindy. There's no ill will. Sometimes I do want to hit him whenever he tells me to go in these places, just because I know it's possibly going to be a frightening thing. But I trust Dave. I trust Cindy, and I think we're a cohesive team that we're going to do anything we can to get the job done.
Okay, and but Shane,
I will say one thing, Tim, real quickly.
Okay.
Shane does stand up for himself on an episode. I hope they show that scene because it was pretty funny the way it played out. But Shane definitely puts his foot down at one point and kind of challenges me. And
yeah. And there's poor Dave moments this season. There's poor Dave moments. But that you're going to see.
Shane, I know Dave. I've known Dave now for over 30 years. How many times do you get the arm around the shoulder and go, "Hey, buddy, I'll buy your lunch if you do this"? Have you gotten that? Have you gotten that?
Well, more it's like, "Hey, get back down and do this thing. Look, we got a job to do." So it's like he's one of these guys that's like, "Look, I understand it's frightening, but you gotta get the job done." Yeah, you may have seen him do that.
Oh yeah.
The Maurice Duhamel last season. Yeah. He's like, "Look, we can't get the job done if you're running out of places all the time." Which that was another thing that he's helped me a lot with. Mm-hmm. This season, I think you won't see me necessarily run out of places as much. You'll still see me get frightened as hell, but I try to stay in there and still try to get the job done. So it's been a learning process for me, and Cindy and Dave both have helped me get to the point to where I am now, and it's just only made me a better investigator, in my opinion.
Well, there's the episode where Shane takes off running and Cindy trips him and tells him, "Sit down, bitch, and deal with the ghosts," and then walks upstairs. Or maybe that was just a fantasy playing out in my mind. I can't remember. We got an email here. It says, "Hi, this question is actually for Cindy. How did you find a way to channel through automatic writing without constantly being interrupted? Do you meditate and ground or something else?"
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So for me, it didn't happen overnight, because when I first started doing automatic writing, it didn't flow as well. So I would start, and then one spirit would come in, and then another would interrupt, and it was like chaos, right? So it just came through just experience and practice and sitting in the energy, and like sometimes even yelling at the spirit world, like, "Hey guys, like get in line," So it was like one of those things where I almost had to like build a rapport with the spirit world in that way, using that way of communication. So anybody who's wanting to learn automatic writing, like if you're having a hard time when you first start and you feel like everything is kind of messy, just keep trying, And then if I talk about being interrupted by just people that are in the living, right? Like, it's the same thing. As a medium, it's about discipline and learning how to stay in the energy of it without interruption. So like I could be doing automatic writing, and then somebody could come into the room that's alive, and it won't interrupt me. So again, it's about experience. It's about learning the energy, and it's about, just not giving up. So that's what I encourage anybody to do that's trying to automatic write or even do mediumship in general.
Is that a form of channeling? Is a spirit working through you to do that, Cindy? I know that's a big question because, Hans would use trance mediums, which the spirits would enter through the human element to communicate and, my body, where's my body? All these creepy audio we have from him. But you're right. How does that work, and how are the spirits affecting you to get that information out?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Dave, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about mediumship in general out there. So technically, any sort of mediumship is a light form of trance. It's about being slightly outside of yourself. But the deeper in the trance you can go, the easier it is for the communication to come out uninterrupted by the mind, right? So automatic writing is trance. It's a light form of trance. I know what's happening, but I'm allowing the spirit to come through me. So I'm not hearing the information and then writing it. It's coming through in real time, like a stream of consciousness. And so Sybil and Ethel were a little bit deeper in trance, right? Deeper than I am with the automatic writing in a sense, because they would probably wake up and not really remember a lot of the things that happened. But even the mental mediumship, quote unquote, where I'm going around doing clairvoyance, it's still a light form of trance. The issue with that is that I have to actually interpret the information through my own, my own stuff. So the spirit world was super smart. They know how to communicate. So, for example, if I'm super good with mechanics and cars, they might give me a lot of stuff about cars because they know that I'll be able to interpret it correctly, right? Because I have that information in my own memory bank. But with trance, with true trance, with deep trance, which I'll tell you, and I mean this, like true trance mediumship is very rare. So what Ethel and Sybil were able to do, that's actually a very rare gift. Trance has become super trendy now. Everybody wants to be a trance medium, but most people aren't true trance mediums. But I understand why Hans found a lot of value in that, because the value comes with the fact that the medium is not in their own way. And the spirit can totally just get in and use the voice to get whatever they want to get out. So it's pretty cool. So automatic writing, right? It's lighter trance, but it's still not full, deep trance. And the most impressive and the rarest gift of trance is trance healing, where you will see, and this is super rare. So we're talking about people that are so deep into trance that they're able to actually heal. They can, or physical trance where people go into trance and ectoplasm comes out and things start flying around the room. I mean, all real things that can happen, but extraordinarily rare to see somebody with that gift.
Well, see, that sounds like me after a visit to Taco Bell. There's something strange in the air and things are flying around the room. I didn't know it was deep trance healing meditation, Tim. Rachel, who wrote those set of questions, is great. She says she's also a medium, but she's learning her gifts right now, and it's like a freaking radio station she cannot turn off. Do you meditate or ground, Cindy? And what bit of advice do you have for Rachel or anybody else that's coming into this gift?
Yeah, so another excellent question, right? Sometimes when you first come into your gift and the floodgates are open, first of all, you're dealing with an extraordinarily powerful energy, and that can almost feel intoxicating sometimes. So what happens is people, once they have this awakening, they're afraid that if they turn it down or control it, that they'll lose it. So what they do is they walk around open all the time and then not knowing what to do with all of the stuff happening. So yes, grounding is so important because I have seen so many mediums, and I was like this when I first really started, like this, when I first decided I'm going to do this, this is what I'm meant to do. I was walking around like so open that I was having a hard time like balancing my own life, right? And that's not healthy. But so meditation is important, but grounding is so important. And having said that, for all of you listening, please know if you decide to ground and pull your aura in and turn your ability down, you're not going to lose it. And in fact, you'll actually strengthen your mediumship the more that you're grounded. And I think that's some people don't realize that. And when we talk about like balancing the chakra system, right, the crown chakra needs to be open to have the connection. But if you're not grounded and further to your root chakra, you'll be like floating away, in your mind. You won't be able to focus. So it's very important to be grounded.
The next question comes from Jerry in Aberdeen to Shane. And this kind of ties in nicely with Cindy's connection and her work. Jerry wants to know, Shane, is there anything special that you do with the equipment to bond with your equipment to make it easier to work with and get better results?
Absolutely. It's research, test. Before I use any of these pieces of equipment on our cases, I do a lot of study about how they work, and then I actually test them before we go out and do these things. I think researching what you're going to be using is highly important, because if you don't do that and you truly don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to operate it, and it's doing, the investigation, the case, a disservice, because you're not knowing what you're doing. So I would say research and test is the main thing I do.
I like to focus on one piece of equipment that, when I'm doing an investigation. This year we introduced the Panasonic DR60, which is kind of the holy grail of audio recorders in the paranormal field. And you and I were skeptical of a lot of the claims of that piece of equipment, Shane, because they said that this recorder was originally taken off the market because it was recording stray audio sounds, perhaps radio frequencies or the internal workings of the machine that were being misinterpreted as words. So when I got it, I was very cautious to what I felt would be, a possible inherent flaw. And I got the recorder sent to me in my hotel. And this was when we first stepped back out onto the field to start investigating after 3 months off. And I remember recording, and I got a response. And I was like, wow, this isn't just like a random sound effect. I called Shane down to my room. I'm like, Shane, listen to this. And then I recorded a second one because Shane was even skeptical. He's like, no way, dude, that has to be you. I'm like, it's not me. And then we recorded this next bit, and as you can hear, Tim will play that in a second, is the audio. As I start asking a question, I get a very chilling, kind of sinister laugh right after I record this. And this was in my hotel room. So this wasn't stray audio artifact from a radio or something else. And when I get a piece of equipment I like, I use it as much as I can, because I feel you do start to get that simpatico relationship with your equipment, and you start to work in in concert with it. And Shane, we saw that when we go into locations. Sometimes you'd be thinking, okay, if there's an inherent flaw, it's going to work everywhere. It didn't work everywhere. We didn't get responses in really crazy haunted places. And then we'd get responses later, which to me made it seem even more impressive when we would get an answer. How did you feel about hearing that kind of audio come out of the recorder?
It was bizarre because, just like you said, I was skeptical. I was like, okay, this has to be, maybe internal noise, something like that. But I remember when you called me down to the hotel room and you said, hey, listen to this, and I voiced that. You said, well, let's just try another EVP session right now, and let's just see what happens. And you did that, and my God, I can't, it gives me chills thinking about it right now. It's just the response right after your question. It's just chilling.
All right, I'm asking it to say my name, like a circus monkey, right? Jump for me, act like this. And we get this. So we'll be real quiet. We'll play that right now.
Sorry, I didn't hear anything. If you're still with me, can you say my name? Can you say Dave? Do you know his name? Are we in any danger going to the location we're going tonight? Thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear anything. If you're still with me, can you say my name? Can you say Dave? Do you know his name? Are we in any danger going to the location we're going tonight? Thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear anything. If you're still with me, can you say my name? Can you say Dave? Do you know his name? Are we in any danger going to the location we're going tonight? Thank you.
Yeah, so you hear that?
Yeah.
Absolutely bone chilling. It is crazy to me that we caught that. And like I said, it was a direct response. And
in my hotel room.
That's a lot of,
it was hard to sleep in that hotel room.
I bet it was.
Yeah, that got real.
A lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, you shouldn't use this piece of equipment because X, Y, and Z," right? But the paranormal, it's all about unknowns, right? So even if you're using equipment, you're testing it in a sense. Okay, maybe there are flaws with some pieces of equipment, but there may be things with that equipment that could further the field forward. So I just ask people to try not to close your mind too much. I understand that it's good to evaluate and try to do the best you can with certain situations, but don't close your mind to things. Just try to open your mind, try to test, and test again. And like you were saying, Dave, with the DR60, we said, well, it'd probably work everywhere if this is internal or whatever. The only way we found that out to not be the case is we kept testing, kept using it in different environments, different locations. That's the only way that you're going to know for sure if there's something to it. If you're getting communication,
right.
That's just my piece of advice. Just keep testing, keep researching, and try to keep an open mind.
And I've got one other piece I'll play for you here. And Tim will play this 3 times in a row. This was fun afterwards. And after Shane and I had this experience, I was video talking with my children. And my daughter, Pacey, who's more interested in the paranormal, was chit-chatting with me about it. And I said, hey, do you want to do an EVP session right now in my room? She's like, yeah, we can do that. And I go, sure, just ask the questions. So we're looking at each other the whole time. And I'm running the recorder. And then I asked some questions. We didn't get a response. I said, why don't you ask some questions? And I started the recorder. And we got the next piece of audio, which I thought was really funny. My daughter, just before she launches in the question, she's like, Dad, I don't know what to ask. And there's this pause. and then you hear this, what sounds like a male voice respond, and I remember Shane and I laughing about this, hear this male voice respond, a question. So it's assuring her to just go ahead and ask a question. And I'd never heard anything like this before. We'll go ahead and play that right now.
I don't know if to ask that. How old are you? I don't know if to ask that. How old are you? I don't know if to ask that. How old are you?
So those are some of the recordings that won't appear in the episodes, but we thought we'd play a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff of some of the weird phenomena we were getting. So we get this real sinister laugh when I'm telling it to say my name, and then a kind of a gentle, kind voice. And like I said, my daughter and I were looking at each other. We would have seen each other's mouth move. This recording is something different unto itself. We have some more emails here. Let me get back into this. Again, this question coming from David in Essex, England, wanted to know if we believe Paranormal Activity amped up this season because of COVID and because of the unique happenings of what was going on in the world around us, and how do we think Hans Holzer would have reacted to what we found this season? Why don't we start off with you, Cindy, on this one? How do you think, you're the one that taps into the other side, how do you think Dr. Holzer would appreciate the activity and evidence we captured?
I mean, gosh, I don't know if I should be speaking for him or not, but I would like to say that he would think it was pretty badass. The evidence and the stuff that we captured this season, it still blows my mind, to the point where there were times where I was like, I can't even believe this is even happening. Like, this is crazy. So I don't know. I think he would be proud of us. He's got big shoes to fill, and it's not that I'm saying that we're able to fill his shoes and take his place, but I think that he would be proud with the way that we're doing these investigations and with the things that we've uncovered.
Shane, what do you think? How do you think, you've known Alexandra Holzer quite a while. I know her, and, to reopen these case files and give us this chance in to investigate. How do you think Hans would have dealt with this in the 21st century with the type of technology we've gotten and the ability to dig deeper into the history? How do you feel he would feel about these cases now?
Well, one thing about Hans Holzer that I know, and even with speaking with Alexandra's daughter, I know this about him, is he's very analytical, and he's all about finding the truth, right? And I think that with the evidence and everything that we have for this season, it would be undeniable for him, because he would see it, it'd be right in his face, I think I'm with Cindy with saying that I believe that he would be proud of the furthering of his original cases. I think he would be proud, and I'm with her again. It's very huge shoes to fill. We'll never truly be able to do that, but I do believe that with his analytical nature and everything like that, he would analyze the evidence that we have this season, and it would be undeniable. He would have to accept it just because of it's right in your face,
And we get this evidence, just so you know, when we investigate, we get this evidence. Shane will take it back to the hotel room and start breaking it down right after an investigation. And it's really uncanny. Sometimes he'll just call me and be like, I don't even know what to say. You guys are going to be blown away by this. And then when you see the reveal that he's showing to Cindy and I, that's the first time Cindy and I get a chance to see these pieces of evidence unfold. And we heard things. We knew we weren't alone. And then to see what we capture is pretty remarkable. At Franklin Castle, Tim, we do something pretty controversial this year. And I know it's going to immediately people are going to see this tool that we're using and go into meltdown mode. But I bring my own spirit board with me, Tim.
Uh-oh.
Which, everybody's, that's a big no-no. But we wanted to try something different. And I actually called a few of my friends that are involved in demonology, in the paranormal, and in Ouija board history. And I asked them, do you think theoretically this experiment would work? And they were like, yeah, that sounds great. Give it a shot. Going into it with intention is the most important aspect. So we go in with this intention, and it was funny because when we're watching the evidence, it was a scene that's involving this spirit board, and Shane was blown away, and Cindy and I are just like, okay, what about it? We're not seeing anything. And he's like, just keep watching. And we'd watch it, and we didn't see it. And your focus is on one thing, and this shows you how fallible we are in the paranormal. We were focused on the board itself watching that footage. And what really is taking place happens behind Shane. And when we saw that happen, when our eyes finally broke free from looking at the wrong part of the screen, it knocked all of us down. I couldn't believe what we just saw unfold on film. And that's how this season has been for me. One kind of gut punch after the other of what is that? Well, and it's really exciting to see it happen.
And I can't believe you're in too much danger, Dave, if you're using a Hello Kitty spirit board. So, there's that,
Here's another email. Hey there, Cindy, Dave, and Shane. This comes from Rebecca Codner. She says, one place I'd love to go and explore for ghosts is the White House. If you were given the chance to ghost hunt there, would you? Yes, hands down. I don't care who the president is. Put me in the White House. I've heard so many cool stories, and I don't know if you two remember this, but one of the gentlemen that we meet with this season actually worked at the White House and wrote a book about his work at the White House and worked with, I think, 7 or 8 presidents. And he told me stories about the haunted White House. So that made it even more intriguing to me. But Chris, he was the guy that we went in and investigated what used to be his old house. And the activity there was nuts. He was so excited by what we were able to capture and prove that what he saw and experienced as a child, someone else could see for themselves. It was great. But Cindy, what about you? Would you like to go to the White House and investigate?
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? That sounds amazing. How do we get in?
Well, we're going to have to send Shane first because he's our canary in the coal mine. If he can get in, then we'll follow. Shane, what about the White House? Is that something that would be a top 10 for you or further down the list?
Oh, yeah, top 10 for sure. The history of the White House, some of the most important men in our history walk those halls. That's just, that's a bucket list. If we could ever do that, that would be a great honor.
I think we'll get into the White House quicker than we'll ever get into Amityville.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Our next comes from Trisha Irvin. She goes, this question is for all three of you. What is the one legend or haunting you've never investigated but want to? I know a lot of people will say Amityville. Being friends with Chris Lutz, the youngest son from that case, I don't believe the haunting stayed there. I believe it did connect to the family, the Lutzes. So truthfully, I mean, I'd love to go into the Amityville house and investigate there, but I just don't feel like we'd really find anything or nothing as deeply compelling as people would expect. So that wouldn't be on even my top 10, to be honest with you. I would rather like the Bell Witch Cave or any of the cases over in Europe that Hans got a chance to investigate. I'd love to go over seas to investigate and see what's going on over there. What about you, Cindy? What would be a top 1 or 2 of your locations in the world you'd like to go investigate?
I agree with you about Europe, Dave. Like anywhere overseas that Hans went, I think that would be really, really fun because the energy in those countries is different, right? There's just so much history. But, God, yeah, I think there's so much. It's such a tough question because I'm kind of open to going anywhere. But I'm really into like haunted land, like land curses, things that involve energies that we can't quite recognize or understand. I'm getting more and more interested in those sorts of things. So anything with elementals or UFOs or stuff like that, it really fascinates me. And I haven't really had a lot of experience in those places, but that's kind of where I'm leaning, I think, too.
All right, Shane, what about you? What would be a top 1 or 2 location that you've never been to, a legend you'd love to explore?
I would love to explore Area 51. I know that's a shift from like spirits and ghosts, but I would definitely love to actually explore and try to find out what exactly is going on there, because you hear all of these stories, you hear all of these things, but nobody 100% knows for sure. That's one spot that I would definitely love to get to.
Dave,
is there a spot, if I can add just a real quick follow-up, Tim, and then I'll let you throw in, but is there a spot that you've investigated, not even necessarily on our show, that you heard such hype about and got there and were really kind of let down by the activity or lack of activity? Shane, how about you?
Yeah, there was one spot that was a really cool place, and but it wasn't what a lot of people were saying in my experience, and that was Bobby Mackey's Music World. I went there, and the overall feeling wasn't malicious, demonic in my experience. It was there was just a completely different feel about the place from what I heard and stories and stuff. So yeah, it would have to be Bobby Mackey's for me.
How about you, Cindy?
And that's funny that you say that, Jane, because I'm the complete opposite when it comes to Bobby Mackey's. Because I went in there and I was like, oh my God, this place is terrible. So it's just so interesting. Like why would one person go in and have one experience and another have a different one? And I think that's kind of telling about how the spirit world can work, right? So it's like,
right.
maybe it only activates for like certain people. I don't know. And in all honesty, guys, like I've said on several other, podcasts and stuff before, like the paranormal world is pretty new to me, because I've spent the majority of my career bringing through, people's loved ones who have died and doing live events. So I haven't really had the privilege to be going to all of these locations. So I don't know yet, right? Like it would be interesting I would love to go to the Amityville house to see what I pick up there, if anything at all. But I don't have a ton of experience going to all the locations like you guys do. So I don't know if I'm the best to answer this question yet, but ask me next year,
All right, Tim, what was your question?
Well, you bring up Amityville, and I have a suggestion / question for you. And I know it seems next to impossible with this scenario, but I'm going to throw it at you anyways. Let's say for S's and G's, you do get a hold of the Amityville, which we know it's close to impossible, but you do get the Amityville site. If you brought Chris Lutz with you as a guest investigator / trigger object, do you believe you would still find something on that site?
Can I answer this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Go ahead, Cindy.
I just want to put in my 2 cents really quickly. That's a great question, because as a medium or psychic, if he were there with me, I would have to wonder, am I picking up on his energy and his experience and reading his mind psychically, or am I picking up on what's actually happening in the house? So I would actually rather go in without him and see what I'm getting first, and then bring him in and see if it changes.
Okay. David?
Yeah, I'd just love to be in there with him again, because I think, and Cindy just tapped on that, bringing him in might reopen memories of the house or his, and I just wonder psychically how that would feel in that moment.
I think it would be fascinating. But Shane, go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, and sometimes, and we've had these cases before too, is sometimes it's not the location, it's the people in the location. So I would like to personally bring him in, of course, Cindy without him first, and then bring him in, just to see, if there's shifts in energy because of that. Sometimes we've seen that it's the actual person that's going through things, and not necessarily the house or the location itself. So it would be really cool to try that.
This next one is from Sarah, and probably more for Cindy. Why do some spirits linger? As a religious person, this really puzzles me. And why can they inflict harm? And that comes from Sarah. What do you make of that, Cindy?
Yeah, so, people or mediums, it's easier to say earthbound spirit, right? Like that term is just really used a lot. For me, it's a confusing term as a medium because I believe when we die, our soul leaves the body and it goes to another dimension. So the way that I interpret an earthbound spirit is a spirit that's really impressed upon or attached to earthly things, still in another dimension, but very, very attached and unable to move beyond earthly things. Why do some spirits, go through that? To me, it's unfinished business. They have things that they weren't able to complete when they were here. They don't realize that they don't have to hold on to the old things that we experience in this dimension. So that's my explanation of it. And then people wonder, well, can you help them cross over? Can you make them cross over? Well, in my experience, they're already crossed over somewhere else. Can I help them move to the next layer, level, whatever you want to call it? Maybe, but the soul of the person has to decide if it wants to go there, right? And as we've seen in investigations, some souls don't want to, and even Hans Holzer experienced that. So it has to do with, in my opinion, it has to do with where the soul is at on the other side and what unfinished business do they have. What was the second part of the question, Dave? Was there a second part?
How can they inflict pain or hurt on people?
Well, I mean, everything's energy, right? Everything is energy. So just because the energy has moved to a different plane, it doesn't mean it can't penetrate this plane. And it can be powerful. And I also think it has to do with how the energy of that particular spirit is interacting with the energy of the person that's being harmed. One of my mentors always said to me, everything is a co-creation. It's not just about the spirit. It's also about how the spirit is interacting with the energy around it. So that's why, when people say, well, do spirits feed off of fear? Well, yeah, they can probably use that fear because fear is a powerful energy to manifest more physical phenomenon and stuff like that. So I really am starting to kind of look at those things. And I do believe everything is kind of a co-creation between the energy of the spirit and the energy that it's interacting with.
Sharon has the next question. She says, Hans Holzer's mediums, did he have a problem with anyone believing her? Because just not believing in mediums back in those days. Oh, sure. Hans Holzer took a lot of flack for the Holzer method, but it was tried and true. He found that it worked the best for him and gave him the best results and answers. And he felt that they were helping the spirits, either in telling their story or helping them to realize that they can move on now. So I'm sure he had his fair share of detractors about the mediums that he used in the era, but that still happens today. There are still people that question our show because of the use of a medium. And it's a tenuous tightrope to walk because it's hard. How do you convey what a medium's experiencing? I think Cindy does the best job of that and really helps the audience connect with that as well. But that's why Shane and I are there. Can we corroborate these claims by collecting evidence and hearing from people that have had experiences to support that this type of activity has taken place? So to me, that's always been a key element. Roger wants to know, Shane, what is your favorite piece of paranormal equipment to use during an investigation?
My favorite, and it's old school, it's a good old-fashioned audio recorder. This surprises a lot of people, but it's one of my favorite to use because I've caught so many great EVPs by just using a good audio recorder. And Dave, like we were talking about with the DR60, I mean, it's just fascinating evidence that that anybody that has this piece of gear could potentially catch, So yeah, my answer is a recorder, an audio recorder.
Cindy, what about you? Is there a piece of equipment that you like to use, or does it interfere with you and what you do?
I really like the old-fashioned audio recorder. In just going back to some of the stuff we captured this season, and with the episode 1 of season 2, the EVP that was out when I was doing my automatic writing, the recorder right next to me, it's like, oh my gosh, like it's just amazing, right? I really love it, and I love the fact that you guys are using this technology because when we can get something from coming out of me and then something validated on the audio or on the equipment, it just makes it that much more powerful. But I do think that audio recorders, they're easy to use, they're simple. I feel like there's not a whole lot of room for something, I guess I'm not really a tech person, but when we use some of the other equipment, the ones like the voice box, the spirit box, right? I love those, but sometimes I wonder, is that just picking up on something random, or is it real? With audio recorder, I don't feel like that's happening.
And also Cindy, this season, real quick, I mean, you had an experience with some of the equipment we used that blew your mind. You remember that? So people can really check that out. You had
on the Queen Mary. Yeah, on the Queen Mary, you're right, Jane. Like, that was probably, man, that was really, really, really interesting, because I was like saying things out loud to the spirits, and it was like immediate response through technology that blew my mind. And even like in Camera Guy, he was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. So that episode was special.
I find it interesting that as we go around the virtual roundtable here and talk about technology, that it's really quite old school as far as audio being a favorite piece of equipment. I want to point this at Shane. Shane, with the advances in video technology, I'm curious what you think Dr. Holzer would think about the advances in video technology, and would he be more partial to video or audio technology with the advances that we've had in the 21st century?
Well, that's hard to say because, unfortunately, we couldn't pick his brain about that now. But with the video technology now, we've come so far to where people are working now with LiDAR technology to where in 3D mapping, where it maps out a room, and we're able to see, like, in real time on screen, on video, objects moving, and it translates on the camera itself and on the screen. I think he would evaluate that, and he'd say, okay, knowing Hans's work and how studious he was with things, he would evaluate the data. He would say, okay, how does this piece of equipment work? What is it doing? What camera is involved? What are the components involved in it? And he would make an educated determination from there. But I believe that he would look at all of the components and say, okay, yeah, this is another piece to the puzzle. Now, between video and audio, like I said, it's hard to say. But if I had to guess, he would be more fascinated with the audio aspect of things, because he would always go into these cases with his good old-fashioned audio recorder and his transmedium. So I think that he would take an interest in the audio sides of things.
It just fascinates me between infrared and the heat signatures and like you said, LiDAR, everything that's out there, 3D mapping, that there's so many tools in the toy box. Like you said, Dr. Holzer is no longer with us. There's no way to know for sure. But with so many tools in the toy box, that a mind could adapt over time and think, I've got so much here that could potentially prove in different ways that spirits are here, at least scientifically, that I'm more willing to adapt and change my theory based on video over audio. Although audio is compelling, audio is not infallible.
Right.
And video is not infallible either, to bring that point up as well.
Right. And I think he would appreciate all of the gear now. Like before, years past, he thought technology was rubbish. That was his words. It was garbage. Throw it out, take a trusted transmedium, and take a notepad and go do your investigating. I think he would appreciate the advances that we have now, but I do, I would have to wonder, would he still, I think he would stick to his good old fashioned method that worked for him, and that was the Holzer method. I think he would appreciate the advances, but he would go with what was working for him. And I think he would lean more towards the Holzer method and his tried and true methods.
Very good.
Hey guys, before we wrap up today, I appreciate, first of all, I know your schedules are super busy today. The Holzer Files Season 2 launches tonight on Travel Channel. Make sure you tune in and check it out. If you can't watch it live, please watch within 24 to 48 hours of that. But I appreciate you guys coming on board to talk with us about Season 2. I want to know if either of you have had any paranormal hangers-on, any attachments that you feel have followed you home from filming this series, because I will tell you, I believe something is going on in my life and in my home since we returned from filming. I can't tell you if it's something that belonged here or if it's something that came along with us from one of the investigations, but I definitely feel like something is happening. How about Shane? We'll start with you, since you're not a medium and aren't always aware of spirits around you. How do you feel it's affected you, and do you feel like anything's followed you home?
Well, personally, no, I haven't had any personal experiences, but I will tell you this. My wife has. This past season, she would have dreams about locations I was in and would tell me, like, describe the room I was in, which was bizarre to me because that's never happened before in our whole marriage. And she doesn't consider herself sensitive or psychic or anything like that. So to have these types of dreams was really fascinating to me. And then even after I arrived home after filming, she would still continue to have dreams. And I've talked about this on programs before, but I don't really talk about the cases or anything with anybody. You know, I want to have it as raw and as real as possible, especially whenever it airs on TV. So the fact that she would pick up on really specific things and have dreams that were directly related to what I was experiencing at the time it just makes me scratch my head and wonder, hey, is there something else going on?
What about you, Cindy? Have you felt like any of the spirits that we've tangled with this season have gone beyond where they were tethered and are now hanging with you, or were for a while?
Well, I know for a fact that it happened. It's interesting because I tend to leave an investigation and just kind of try to be closed so I'm not, interacting with the spirit world every day, all day. But what's interesting is I have a friend who's a trance medium who lives in Indonesia. She speaks really good English. So she called me. She called me on WhatsApp. She's like, hey, I need to talk to you. Can I call you? And I said, yes. So she called me and she's like, look, I really think there's a spirit that followed you home from a location. I was like, really? And I don't know if I told you guys the story, but it's crazy. So it was after we were at the Surratt Tavern. And I was like, well, maybe. I was like, I feel okay. She goes, no, this woman is following you around. And she goes, my brother drew her. So now this Sarah's brother, Wisnu, is a spirit. He draws spirits. And they had no idea where we had been. We're not allowed to post things about our locations when we're there. So they had no idea. He drew an exact picture. I'm going to text this to you guys because I don't think I did before, of one of the spirits in the house, exact. And they were able to tap into it. So I know for a fact that it happened. And then she's like, let me help you. Let's talk to her and tell her she doesn't need to follow you. But you guys, it was crazy. I'm going to see if I can find this picture now and I'll text it to you.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So all of us were affected this season. That's interesting. I will say there's been some very strange things from one day we were here and my daughter and son were on the stairs and we were chatting, and then I heard my other daughter, Pacey, respond. And my daughter, Ripley, stopped and looked at me. And then a few seconds later, I said something and I'm like, well, go get your sister. And she said, she's not here, Dad. And I go, what do you mean? She goes, she's at her friend's. And I said, no, she's not. I just heard her. And Ripley looks at me and goes, I know, so did I. And I'm like, get out of here. And she goes, no, Dad,
wow.
she's not home. But we physically heard a voice that sounded like my other daughter respond. We've had some footsteps. Now, shortly after my wife's father passed away, we started having something seen moving around the house. We don't know if it's him or what, but then the other night, we're all sleeping and it's about 2:30 in the morning, and I wake up and I couldn't figure out why I woke up, but I woke up and then heard what I thought was an intruder coming through my glass back door. I just heard bam, and I got out of bed and I'm like, I'm in my underwear and t-shirt. What am I going to do? So I cautiously go downstairs. One of the lower cabinets is open, and total of three, but three of our Pyrex glass cooking containers are on the floor. Two of them perfectly fine. One of them shattered in pieces across our dining room, across our living room, across our kitchen, around the island. I don't know how that much glass got moved around that big an area like that. And I can find no reason for it, because if it would have just fallen out of that cabinet, it was a low level cabinet. It should have just slid out, hit the floor, and made some rattling noises. This shattered like something exploded, and it sounded like something exploded when we were upstairs. So I cleaned that up, but we've been having weird stuff. And I got to tell you, in one of the episodes, guys, I did something I've never done before, and I removed my protection jewelry, and I'm starting to worry that might not have been the best idea for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. I'll keep our listeners abreast of what's happening, and keep you in mind as well, Cindy. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, guys, check your text.
Yeah,
check your
okay.
text. I just sent you a text about the picture, the comparison of the drawing.
Okay, and that's something too that's exciting this season. Cindy, who is an automatic writer, she also is a spirit artist. And we actually get her to involve that aspect of her abilities this season in 2 different episodes, which is pretty remarkable. So we got to watch that unfold live on air as she was sketching these images, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was very cool. Fortunate to be able to try that this season. It's one of those abilities where, like, my automatic writing is more developed, but I've slowly started to incorporate the spirit art. So it was fun to use that this season.
Yeah, it was really a cool element to add in. And I just got the picture. Holy, what the flip? That's insane. Wow.
But look at, like, the exact way that it was drawn, looking the same way. It's like, you can't make that up. That's from Indonesia. Like, they have no idea where we were. And it's crazy.
Our listeners are
going, that is mind-blowing to me.
Can I share that?
That is mind-blowing.
Cindy, am I allowed to post that picture?
I mean, I think so. I don't know why not. You're fine to do it. I'm fine that you do it. I don't know if we need approval from Painless or the network, but yeah, you can.
Why don't I go to darknessradio.com, go to the news section, folks, and under today's date, October 29th, you'll see this image of a photograph of Mary Surratt, I believe. Is that Mary Surratt in the photo?
Is it Anna? I think it's Anna. I think
Anna Surratt.
It's Anna.
Mm-hmm. And you'll see the image that was drawn, and it's really uncanny. We'll have that up on the site so you can see that today on the program guide. Tomorrow, not tomorrow, this weekend we're normally off, but because Tim and I love you, me more than Tim, we have put together a special Halloween edition of Darkness Radio, Harvest Alien Abduction. G.L. Davies joins us as we discuss one of the most terrifying investigations yet that Gavin Davies is involved in. In 2009, one woman from Pembrokeshire believed she was abducted by aliens, and what followed was a terrifying ordeal of alien visitation, nightmarish visions, encounters with terrifying creatures, and more. That's this week. You get an additional Darkness Radio on Halloween. You're welcome, trick or treat. So if you're trapped inside and you want something creepy to listen to, we're here to provide for you. Holzer Files every Thursday night. Tonight's the kickoff of the new season. Please check it out and make sure that you tell your friends, neighbors, co-workers about the show and spread the word. And also, speaking of spreading the word, please rate and review this podcast, however you listen to it. If it's on iTunes specifically, go on and rate and review it. We'd love to keep getting those numbers up. It gets more profile on their websites and puts it out to go give us 5 stars and a nice comment. So please consider doing that, or on any of the different podcast versions that you listen to this show. Please go rate and review the program. Keep tuning into the Holzer Files so that we can Shane come back in season 3. I love these two. I love our whole cast and crew. Working with Alexandra and Gabe and Cindy and Shane has been a real delight, and we've become a family. I miss you guys when we're not together, and I hope we get to see each other soon for season 3. Please stay safe out there. All right, guys?
You too, Dave. Thanks.
Thank you
Shane.
so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Miss
Thanks,
you
everyone.
too, man.
Yep. Miss you guys. Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Everybody else can tune back in on Halloween for a brand new episode. Brand new, not a replay of an old episode, folks. Brand new episode, Harvest, Alien Abduction. Gavin Davies, our guest this Saturday. Happy Halloween. Be safe out there. We'll see you again soon, right here on Darkness Radio.